Well, it is a Friday. That means you've made it to the weekend, and it means that Texas is just now less than 24 hours out from their meeting in Starkville, Mississippi, with with Jeff Levy's Mississippi State. But what's the Bulldogs there at Davis Wade?
Davis Wade Stadium.
So pumped to be here with you for a Final Takes Friday on Orange Bloods Live, and we're here because of our great sponsor, the Man Eye Institute. See life better at the Man Eye Institute. 1-844-WOW 2020 is where you can get them for all your vision, LASIK, whatever it is that you have. The Man Eye Institute is our presenting sponsor here on the show. We can't thank them enough for allowing us to do this show, and thanks to everybody for watching. As a big thank you, we are offering you guys through Halloween 20% off of our Alpha Seasoning Elite Spice Blend. You can get it at alphaseasoning.com. Use the code SPOOKY20 for 20% off. It is the Elite Spice Blend by myself and Cody Carpentier. We spent over a year developing this thing with all the most premium ingredients possible. It's the most unique and best spice blend there is on the market. Cody, if you'd like to tell them a little bit about what they can use it on, what they can expect. Again, you get 20% off, and if you buy 3 bottles, you will get free shipping.
3 bottles, you get free shipping, and you can use the promo code SPOOKY20 to get 20% off, or you can go to Hudson Meat Market or Texas Beef Traders and pick it up as well if you're in the Austin area or Marble Falls area or Lakeway area. I personally use it on literally everything. That's why I love it so much, but I think you'll use it on everything as well. Chicken, hamburger, ribeyes. I use it on, my wife uses it on edamame, and she's put it on Caesar salads before. I personally like it on tater tots, potatoes, chopped potatoes. Last night, I had it on the newest thing I've ever put it on, Alex. I don't know if you eat eggplant or not, but I put it on eggplant.
It would be awesome on that.
And
yeah.
I put eggplant in the air fryer. You put some oil on it. You air fry it up. You put some Alpha seasoning on it. It finishes in about 8 to 10 minutes. It's a little crispy. It's kind of like a chip, the eggplant is, and it's got some Alpha seasoning on it. It literally works on everything.
20% off at alphaseasoning.com. Use that promo code SPOOKY20. All right, Cody, final takes. What is your score prediction for this game?
My prediction, I came to this. I put my prediction in as 20-13.
You and I are close. Yeah, you and I are close.
And I sat, and it wasn't as tough as like the last few weeks have been, but I feel in a situation where I don't know how Mississippi State scores 13, but I equally don't know how Texas scores 20. But I feel better about Mississippi State scoring less than 13. The thing for me with Texas is I no longer feel like this thing in this pit in my stomach where I go, I think you could flip a coin and this team could go from scoring 17 to scoring 37 or 47. Like I'm not sure that's in the bag this week, but I do see a situation where Texas can completely shut these guys out. I talked about it yesterday, a potential shutout coming. I initially had 20-3 written in here. I did some deeper work. There's been 16 such games in the SEC this year where a team has been favored by 7.5 points or more. This number was at 5.5, 6.5. It's moved to 7.5 at some books. At 7.5.
Has it moved to 7.5?
Huh. 7.5 at FanDuel was today. And SEC teams favored by 7.5 or more are 16-0 outright this year. 16-0. However, 4 of those games were from road teams that were favorites. Texas was a 12.5 point favorite at Kentucky. Texas A&M was a 7.5 point favorite at Arkansas. Tennessee was a 10 point favorite at Mississippi State. Ding, ding, ding. Ole Miss was a 7.5 point favorite at Kentucky. None of them have covered the 7.5 points or more points. So they're 0-4 against the spread, 7.5 points or more, 16-0 outright. So I'm going 2013. Texas wins, Mississippi State covers.
If it's the 7.5, a lot. I mean, that would cover.
That's the threshold of the conversation here. Now, if the number goes down, it's 6.5. Like I think it's 6.5 at like BetMGM or something. But it's like I saw it 7.5 at FanDuel. I've seen it at 7.5 at different places. The baseline of the historical data that I looked up was 7.5 and up. And the reason I use 7.5 is obviously because there's a hook on the 7. And so that was kind of what I built that around. So that's the theory I'm buying here, 7.5. And I think Mississippi State covers a 7.5.
My score prediction was 20-7. And
I like it.
That was because and obviously that implies that Texas scores 2 touchdowns and kicks 2 field goals, right? I think, and honestly, man, it was funny when I was writing up my prediction. I was like, I think that the offense actually gets a little bit on track here. I think the defense plays well, and the offense gets a little bit on track, 20-7. And how bad is that to say, like, I think that the offense gets back on track a little bit and still just give them that kind of puny of a number. And the fact of the matter is, um, I would think that Texas fans would hope that this game would serve as a game to where you could say, okay, another after a step forward versus Oklahoma, and then a step back versus Kentucky. If they can take a step forward versus Mississippi State, then maybe coming into next week, Vandy, you would say to yourself, okay, now if we can take the step forward versus Vandy, we can be looking like a team that, with the way the rest of the schedule is laid out, it's like maybe they're beginning to peak. The offense. Here's the thing: the offense. If Arch Manning can just be the Arch Manning that he was versus Mississippi State last year, this team rolls. They just roll. I have not seen that, though, and I'm not sure that Arch Manning is capable of being the Arch Manning that he was last year, because the offensive line is not the offensive line that it was last year.
Yep.
With that being said, I kind of split. I was thinking about it. I kind of split the difference in my head, and I said some of the statistics that you were giving out yesterday about the pressure rate from Mississippi State, about the fact that their defensive line is maybe. We wouldn't call them a weakness like you would call the Texas offensive line a weakness, but certainly it's not like one of these things where you have a really strong part of your team like it was Florida. Not to say they have a great defensive line, but they have guys like Tyreek Sapp, and they have these players that you really worry about. And with Oklahoma, that they have a defensive line that you worry about. They have four guys really who are dudes. You know what I mean? I don't see Mississippi State being able to affect the Texas offensive line and in turn Arch Manning in the same way this week. I also think in this week, I just think that they have to. If you're just being sensible and being honest with yourself, you're saying, dude, we need to work on some of Arch's checks to make sure that he's not always facing a free rusher like this. And when he is facing a free rusher, he knows where his hot read is, and he just plays pitch and catch. And so whenever I put those things together, I think they're going to score a couple times. I think they're going to get a couple of field goals. Sark's going to know it's going to be a game where points are at a premium. So if they do get down into one of these 4th and 2 spots on the 38-yard line, right, we've seen Shipley's had plenty of leg. So I don't necessarily think it's going to be one where he'll be super aggressive in those spots situationally. So that's my prediction, 20-7 Texas. And I think, honestly, just going on to my next final take here, I haven't done this all season, but I look at the prize picks number for Ryan Wingo, and let me see where it is now. It is
37.5.
It was at 44.5 earlier this week. Yeah, it's at 44.5 receiving yards right now. I think in this game, Sark had said, we're going to see this week us. Kirk Bowles asked him earlier in the week, saying, are you thinking about slimming down the playbook a little bit? And Sark was like, it's not so much about slimming down the playbook, but it's about identifying the things that we really do well and kind of sticking to those things. And I wrote after he said that, I was like, well, I'll be interested to see what they do, because I'm like, with all due respect, I'm not making fun of the offense, but I don't really know what they do well at this point. It's hard for me to identify the thing. It's where like, okay, well, that's what's signed, stamped, and sealed is what Texas does well on offense, right? I think, from what I had in the war room, I was talking to somebody that, is around practice and who obviously, not a member of the coaching staff, but somebody who, team insider that's always around there. And I'm like, well, what do they do well in practice? Like, does Arch struggle, at times like he does in games? Is it surprising to see him struggle? And he's like, dude, in practice, what Arch does is he connects all the time with Ryan Wingo. And so I'm just like, man,
everybody wants to hear that.
It's just so much different, because it feels like on field in actual games, it feels like there's definitely some kind of lack of chemistry there between those two specifically. But I do think there's some sentiment behind the scenes that Arch to Ryan Wingo connection is something that they can kind of use as a calling card. And in a matchup like this versus a defense like this, I still think Wingo is athletic enough and good enough to where he can get one over on him. And we're talking about a guy that has a 25% target share. He should be going ape. We shouldn't be seeing these 44.5-yard lines for him. He, like everybody else with a 25% target share on a major college program, is going to have receiving lines like 69.5, 74.5, something like that, right? It's too much volume to be able to have this little projectable output out of it. And to be fair, it's been mostly right all season to probably take the under on things like that. I think this is a week where Ryan Wingo, not to say that he goes bananas and asserts his name on the national stage, but has a better game than usual. And in doing so, I'm gonna say I can't believe it, but I think Ryan Wingo will be the offensive MVP this week.
I like it. If I just ask you really quickly, if you take Ryan Wingo alternate receiving yards to 79 and Brennan Thompson alternate receiving yards to 79, you get 10x on Prize Picks.
No, I'm not going to do it.
Brennan Thompson had 155 last week against Florida. And that would mean, Wingo, you got to connect on, in an ideal world, 2 balls, 3 balls, and you think you can get him there. All you have to do is connect on one of those crossing routes, and the dude will take it for 75 on one play. Just saying, if you want to sprinkle a little bit, it's 10x for those 2 guys to do that. My offensive MVP, I think you say it very well. Like, what does this team do well? And you kind of put my brain into a little bit of a tizzy when you said that you were talking about that with your source. And I'm like, nothing.
No, I'm like we said, we're not trying to make fun. We're saying, like, what can you look back at?
That's facts.
Like what they do well is run outside zone versus Oklahoma.
Yeah. So
that's it with Trey Wisner, or they go gangbusters with the vertical passing game for 8 minutes of regulation, but between the end of the first quarter and halftime versus Sam Houston State. Those are the things that they do well.
I'm going to go Trey Wisner for my offensive MVP. So the first half of this game, they're going to be playing without Mississippi State's going to be playing without Zachary Tillman, their linebacker. I think I can't remember if it's a what the deal is. I think it was a targeting from the last game. But he leads Mississippi State in run stops with 9. That's 45th in the SEC. That's their best run stoppers, their linebacker, number 7, Zach Tillman. They're also 15th, like I said yesterday, in pass rush. I think early and often to try to run the ball, which is when you talk about Sark saying simplify things. The most simple offense that Sark can run, and his goal is what you just said. Run the outside zone, run the ball with Trey Wisner, get things going with the run game, and then that opens up the passing game. I'm going to go Trey Wisner gets over $1 this week. We talked about it last week potentially. It didn't happen. I'm going to go Trey Wisner gets north of 100 this week against the Bulldogs.
Let's look around some of the rest of the SEC. Tell me what you think about this. Oklahoma, Mississippi State visits Oklahoma. It looks like Oklahoma's 5.5-point favorites here in this one. Looks like everybody's taking Ole Miss in the points, where I'm looking 80% of the bets, or 80% of the bets, 78% of the money is on Ole Miss here. What do you have on Trinidad Chambliss versus John Mateer, who should be pretty well on the mend by now?
I generally am in line with like most of Josh Pate's views on most things. He took Texas out of his rankings yesterday, the commissioner poll, and he bumped Oklahoma up to 9 and said that Oklahoma bounced back after the Texas loss against South Carolina. Whilst nobody in America gives any respect to South Carolina, that was like a 3:00 kick at South Carolina last week. They're not a good football team right now. It seems like Oklahoma's getting no punishment for this whole thing. I think Ole Miss knows where they're at and that they need to bounce back from that Georgia game. Now, I think that Georgia game might be a situation where you're looking at a letdown from the perspective of like a high energy, high output letdown, which we've seen happen. But and you also have this this coach corollary where the coaches that are in the conversations right now for a lot of these jobs are kind of like when their name gets warmed up a lot, they struggled last week. Matt Rule struggled last week. Like
I wouldn't say Kiffin struggled. I mean, like
they said today he's going to address his team today about this Florida stuff.
oh, well,
Would
really?
you do that
Why?
if you were
Why
him?
would you do that on a Friday
That's
before a game?
that was a report that came, I think, on 3
I hope
Report that came out.
I hope that that's just him saying, "Look, I'm not taking that job." If he says anything like, "Look, guys,
If they beat Ole Miss, this team is going to be, I don't even know what to think.
Well, dude, here's the thing. Honestly, it's best for Texas fans if they do.
That's true.
It's best for Texas fans if they do. I mean, it's like Texas right now. They need. It's like I get to thinking about like Texas fans are going to want like just selfishly. It's like it's just an innate thing that Texas fans do is they want to see Oklahoma lose, right? And they want to see A&M lose, right? And I was just thinking, man, this weekend, be careful what you wish for with these games because those are going to be games where you're going to have to point at your big wins on the schedule and say like, well, look, this team ended up going this and this team ended up going this or whatever, man. You can't at this point, as much as it stinks to say it, you probably I mean, I'm not saying you got to go root for the Aggies or that you got to root for these guys, but the Aggies going into LSU, that's what 2.5 points they are favored by. Who do you have winning in this one? Oh, you didn't even say who you had winning between Ole Miss and I think Ole Miss covers, and I think Ole Miss beats them, dude. I'm not going to root for it, but I think they do.
I came in with Ole Miss, but I think I just talked myself into Oklahoma.
Okay, now finally A&M LSU. Are you laying the points with A&M here? Are you going with Brian Kelly? I think he's like what 20-1 there at night.
They've hosted more night games the last 4 years than anybody in the SEC. I think that they're in the situation like this is, I think, a general A&M letdown spot. And on the other side, it feels like LSU's maybe got their back against the wall, but I'm not sure if they know it yet. I mean, they lost to Vandy. That should be a wake-up call enough. I'm not sure if they know it. It's a wake-up call or not. So I'm going to go Aggies.